Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Alton. My name is Peg Flack, and Coyote Chris Sutton will be joining us in this Father's Day service for you on Sunday, June 20th, 2021. Our sermon title today is In the Name of the Father, and we'll explore the different ways that a father is seen as across time by various cultures and how we can use it in our own spiritual journeys. First UU of Alton is a small lay-led congregation on the bluffs of the Mississippi River. Special welcome to you if you're exploring our fellowship today. We're glad you're here and hope that you'll join us again in our faith community. Here we seek to offer a truly inclusive message as Unitarian Universalists. We begin our worship with a prelude. We have a tradition in our fellowship of lighting a chalice as we begin our service, and we speak these words. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope in celebration of the life we share together.
Good morning. This is our reading for this morning. It's called Monster Slayer and Yaitsa. This is a Navajo story. Changing Woman's twin sons, the war twin gods called Monster Slayer and Made and Born for Water, had been born for the purpose of ridding the earth of the monsters who were killing all the people. When the boys were grown, a matter of 12 days, they told their mother that they wanted to visit their father. Changing Woman tried to discourage them, not properly identifying their father, and when that failed, telling them how dangerous the trip would be, how many gardens there were at his house, how he was without mercy, but they also got advice from others, such as the Arrow people, and Wind's child had been placed at their earfolds to advise them at all times. For see, their father was the sun, That's where they had to go. They overcame many hazards on their trip to their father's house. and were given a white shell, prayer plume by the dawn, to use to protect themselves when they were in the sun's house. They also received advice from Father Sky, Hornworm, Water Sprinkler, and Spider-Man. Not the Marvel Comics Spider-Man. This is like a god sort of thing. So that the twins then moved along the top of a rainbow to the house of their father, the sun. In the sun's house, in went many trials to prove to the sun that they were indeed his sons. The white shell prayer plume was essential for their survival during these tests. But in the end, the sun accepted them as his sons, clothed the older in turquoise and the younger in white shell, and inquired of them why it was they came to see him. He opened doors in each of the cardinal directions, doors of turquoise, white shell, abalone, and jet, offering the boys jewels, livestock, and game, plants and beautiful flowers, rain and rainbows. But one's child, at their earfolds, advised him to answer each time, "We did not come for that, my father. That is not our purpose in being here." Then one's child told them to say, "We too came for the pair of zigzag lightning that lie up there, and flint stones, flint clubs, flint leggings, flint garments, flint headgear, flint wrist guards. These we too came for. On account of the monsters, there is just about one person left." The sun answered them slowly, telling them that they are brothers to monsters they wish to kill, but that's apparently no more. He then placed agate in them, making them immune to injury, and gave them the garments and weapons they had asked for. The older got dark flint, who's Monster Slayer the older, and the younger, born for water, blue flint garments. The sun gave them prayer sticks, and then told them that the younger of the two would sit watching these prayer sticks, while the older, Monster Slayer, went out to kill the monsters. If these prayer sticks began to burn, this would signal that his brother was in danger, and he should go to him to help. He then took them to the sky opening, just over Mount Taylor, and told them where to find the big god, Yeti-Oso. One child then took word over to the Hesperius Peak to Yellowwind to spread the word that they were returning. The sun placed the older one at the tip of the zigzag lightning and shot him to the center of Hot Spring, the home of Yaitso. He placed the younger on the tip of a straight lightning and shot him to the center of Hot Springs. There they waited for Yaitso to come for water, as he did every day, exactly at noon. Each day he drank all the water. When Yaitso arrived, he approached from each direction, a little closer each time, inspecting the vicinity of the spring. He saw no one as the twins were concealed by a dark cloud. After the fourth time, he came all the way to the spring and began to drink. When almost all the water was gone, when Yaitso was drinking for the fourth time, one's child told them to step out and make themselves known. They left the dark cloud and walked into the plain sight, where Yaitso saw them when he looked up. Then they exchanged taunts. Yaitso threw flake clubs at them, missing each time because one's child was whispering in their ears. The spinning club he threw cut a path through the trees and stones, making a barren strip. Then Yaitso had no more weapons. At that point, a big storm began, and Yaitso was wrapped in zigzag lightning. The lightning stripped off his flint armor. One child told the twins that this was their time now and to shoot into the sole of Yaitso's foot. Monster Slayer used one of the zigzag lightning arrows to do this. He then shot a straight lightning into Yaitso's hip, which brought Yaitso to his knees, but he rose. Monster Slayer then shot a zigzag lightning into the small of Yaitso's back. He fell to his knees, but rose yet again. Then Monster Slayer shot a straight lightning arrow into the back of Yaitso's head. This time Yaitso fell. At some distance away from a place called Open Mouth Bear, blood came pouring out. Yaitso had hidden his heart, nerves, and breath there. The blood from the body and from the distant place moved towards each other. One child pointed out that should these streams meet, Yaitso would come to life again. Monster Slayer immediately drew a zigzag line with his club between the streams, while giving his call, "Ha ha! Ha ha!" Born for Water drew a straight line between the streams with his club while giving his call, "Ha ha ha!" Then they repeated these actions, and blood stopped flowing there. The earth trembled and sounds filled the sky. The blood turned to the lava seen around Mount Taylor today. Monster Slayer removed the scalp of Yaitso, and the two were overcome by the vapors from the body. They helped each other stagger over to Juniper, where they recovered by chewing some of the juniper. When they returned home, after an absence of only 4 days, they needed to convince their mother, Changing Woman, that they had actually been successful in killing Yaitso. She then danced outside with Yaitso's scalp between her teeth.
However we meet, whether through Zoom or in person, we find communion with each other. No walls confine us. May our faith be strengthened, and may our practice of inclusive kindness enrich all our lives. And we'll just place a little reminder here that contributions to the sustenance of this church are certainly welcome through mail or the online Givelify app. That information will be displayed for your reference. Thank you. To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love we call community, we dedicate ourselves, and these are offerings. And now our sermon, in the name of the Father, and Coyote Chris Sutton.
Good morning. My name is Coyote Chris Sutton. As some of you know, I was born, well, wasn't born in the church. I came to my parents, Joe and Sue Sutton, brought me to the First Unitarian Church probably when I was about 4 or 5. And I went till I was about 13. And then as an adult, I brought my children there, Emily and Max, and my wife, Julia. And we've stayed for several years until, other things called. And so away we went again. But, my heart is always with the church. And it's very much a pleasure to be here to speak to you all today. And the name Excuse me. The name of my sermon is called "In the Name of the Father." And I mentioned my father Joe earlier. This would have been his. This would have been the year of his 101st birthday. Um, he passed in. Wasn't passed. He died in 2011 on July 2nd, and so he's been gone about 10 years. Oh, almost 10 years. And so a lot of the things I'm talking about today were influenced by him, how I was raised, some of his qualities. Um, I was never, we were into the Bible and things like that. So I didn't read the parables of Jesus. I heard the stories of now the books of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, Odysseus and Achilles and things like that. Those were those were my heroes back then. Um, and so as I grew older, it influenced my reading. His influenced my reading. He was an English teacher, very much into the classics, but also into other stories as well. And he put into me a love for not just good literature or good fiction, but also the need to expand myself through literature, through art, even movies and things like that, for inspiration. He was a man of not a whole lot of words, but he taught by example. And so some of the things, like some of the qualities I'll be bringing out in some of the fathers here, I'll be discussing what that means to me. And so I hope you all get a kind of the same kind of feeling that, oh yeah, my dad was like this, or oh, my dad wasn't like this. No father is perfect. Some fathers do better than others, and that's something we live with. We learn either way, whether it's from the positive or negative or both, as in my case. And so just realize that, fathers are very important parts of our lives. Those of us who are one way or the other. I mean, I was lucky to have my father all through my childhood. My parents were never divorced or anything like that. So I was very lucky. And everybody has that. They lose a father, or they're raised in a household without a father. And that's all good. It's all okay. Um, but I just want to talk to my experience and see how it might relate to some of your experiences in your life. Because not only am I a son, but I'm also a father myself. So they're two pretty cool kids. So what I've done today, I'm so used to speaking to live audiences that I have to admit, I've been kind of flustered with this one. And I do a lot of public speaking. So it's like, this is like, I'm not gonna have anybody to, because a lot of times I base a lot of what I say about how I see people out there. And, I might say this because something comes to mind. But I will forge ahead either way. And what I've done is selected some short readings, and I'll comment on those, and we'll go from there, and we'll see what pops up. Because I never know what's going to happen, which is exactly what you shouldn't do. But if you know me, you know that's kind of how I roll. Okay, like I said, my father was very influential in teaching me about Greek mythology when I was young. So I've chosen. There's lots of stories about fathers. I stayed away from Oedipus. That's kind of a little bit over the top. So probably not a good Father's Day message. Good warning, but not for today. So this is the myth of Daedalus and Icarus. And I got this from the Greek Myths and Greek Mythology page online. The myth of Daedalus and Icarus is one of the most known and fascinating Greek myths, as it consists of both historical and mythical details. While in Crete, Daedalus created the plan for the Minoan palace of Knossos, one of the most important archaeological sites in Crete and Greece today. It was a magnificent architectural design and building of 1,300 rooms decorated with stunning frescoes and artifacts saved until today. The sculpture of Ariadne, there we go, in Knossos, and many others in Yolanda and Caria are also his. King Minos and Daedalus had great understanding at first, but their relationships started deteriorating at some point. There are several versions explaining this sudden change, although the most common one is that Daedalus was the one who advised Princess Ariadne to give Theseus the thread to help him come out from the infamous labyrinth after killing the Minotaur. And then, Theseus and Ariadne take off after that. So that probably endear Daedalus to King Minos. But yeah, getting his monster kill is probably the worst things because it was built by Daedalus. King Minos wanted a building suitable to imprison the mythical monster Minotaur, and according to the myth, he used to imprison his enemies in the labyrinth, making sure they would be killed by the monster. Minos was infuriated when he found out about the betrayal and imprisoned Daedalus and his son Icarus in the labyrinth. I mean, so it feels safer now because the monster's gone. He's dead. So Icarus was a young son of Daedalus and Nausicrate, one of King Minos' servants. Daedalus was way too smart and inventive, thus he started thinking about how he and Icarus could escape the labyrinth. Knowing that his architectural creation was too complicated, he figured out they could not come out on foot. He also knew that the shores of Crete were perfectly guarded, thus he would not be able to escape by sea either. The only way left was in the air. Daedalus managed to create gigantic wings using branches of osier and connected them with wax. He taught Icarus how to fly, but told him to keep away from the sun because the heat would make the wax melt, destroying the wings. Daedalus and Icarus managed to escape the labyrinth and flew free in the sky. The flight of Daedalus and Icarus was the first time that man managed to fight the laws of nature and beat gravity. Though he was warned, Icarus was too young and too enthusiastic about flying. He got excited by the thrill of flying and carried away by the amazing feeling of freedom and started flying high to salute the sun, diving low to the sea, and then up high again. His father Daedalus was trying in vain to make young Icarus understand that his behavior was dangerous, and Icarus soon saw his wings melting. Icarus fell into the sea and drowned. The Icarian Sea where he fell was named after him. There's also a small nearby island called Icaria. So, pretty well-known tale there. But it also shows, roles that fathers take. There's example, Daedalus, tries to teach Icarus patience, okay? Instead of acting rashly, or trying to walk out of the place, get caught, or trying to, go out by the shore, by the coast, wasn't going to work. So he becomes inventive and bides his time. It took him a long time to build that, to get the feathers, to get the wood, everything he needed to put those together, massive wings at that, and 2 pairs of them. So it's teaching patience. Now, Icarus is very young, and sometimes young among us, and I can myself remember some of the things I did that my father certainly didn't teach me how to do. But that's, it's part of a hard part about being a parent, because you have to let them fly, but you try to teach them to fly safely. And this is, in this story, it's almost like it has almost a Buddhist concept to it, because it talks about the middle path. Icarus takes an uneven path. He goes up and he goes down. So the cautions were if he flew too high, the wax would melt his wings. He would crash in the sea. Now, if he got too close to the ocean, the waves would come up and slap him down and he'd drown. So Icarus is taught by Daedalus, his father, stay the middle way. But he got, again, youthful exuberance. And this happens sometimes in life where, fathers lose sons because of that. Even though you teach them the best you can not to do certain things, they do it. Now, in less extremes, it's sort of a good lesson when you teach your children, or your father teaches you that, you should do things a certain way, or it would be best if you did. And I was always full of that, where I could say, oh, I know what the heck I'm doing. And crashed and burned more than once. And so you learn to look back and say, yeah, okay. The old man knew what he was talking about. So, but it's also what I do with my kids. I mean, I would say, I never told them what they had to do. I said, do what you love. And I'd watch them do stuff. I'm like, I don't think you're going to love that, but you have to let them learn. You can't control them so much that they are always doing what you want them to do, and you stifle their growth. They never find their bliss. So you allow them to grow. You allow them to make mistakes, like my dad, did. Now, in Daedalus's case, it was fatal. But the myth tells stories about how we should live our lives. They're showing the consequences of Icarus's act by failing to heed his father's advice. And so, yeah, that's good about that tale, because Daedalus is teaching Icarus these good things. Icarus doesn't listen, and so it ends up in his death. So that's sort of a neat tale. Yeah, there's so many cool stories around the labyrinth and all that sort of stuff. Theseus and the young lady. So yeah, it's a neat story. There's lots of things in Greek literature, Greek mythology. Um, Hector's speaking to his son before he goes out to fight Achilles, and to his mother, and to the son's mother. There's a great father figure. Priam, another one you can look up from the Iliad. He was not a bad man, but a flawed man. And most of his fathers are flawed in some way. So, yeah, there's lots of tragedy, but there's lots of lessons in the myths and those things, and with all sorts of different cultures. Now, one thing I am is a big Star Wars fan. Um, I remember, right, because now I'm old enough just to say that I was there in 1977 when Star Wars: A New Hope opened up, and I went once. And so I was so amazed by it that I told my dad, I said, "You got to go." And so he goes, "Okay," and I kind of surprised, but I said, "Yeah, I'll go with you." And gosh, it's back when the old Jamestown movie theater. We went over there, and we watched it together, and he was really impressed with it. He liked it because Alec Guinness was in it, so Dad liked Alec Guinness, and so we checked that out, and it was really fun. But it was one of those good time, because it's teaching. Again, this is like a myth. Star Wars is. When it was written, um, Joseph Campbell really influenced the writers of that. Joseph Campbell, the mythologist. So a lot of that went into this. So you got some sort of these sort of Greek mythy things going on in there. Um, but one of the character struck me the most in the first Star Wars movie was Obi-Wan Kenobi. Um, like I said earlier, he was played by Alec Guinness. And he was like a father figure to Luke. Because, sometimes father figures aren't your biological parents. It might not be your regular father. It might not be the father that lives in your household, somebody outside of that. Because some people, they don't have fathers, their fathers died, or they've left. And so people come into their lives who can give them some of those teachings that their father is not there to give them. In this case, Obi-Wan finds Luke, and it's a little vignette, a little paragraph here from Star Wars: The Importance of Father Figures by Annalee James. Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi was the father figure for Luke Skywalker that Luke needed. His aunt and uncle took care of him, but they never really encouraged him to be the person he knew he was meant to be. Obi-Wan did not try to hold Luke back. He went on to steer Luke on the path to becoming a Jedi, teaching him the ways of the Force and the Millennium Falcon, aiding him in the Death Star Trench, leading him to yoga on Dagobah. Obi-Wan, the father figure, was there for Luke every time he truly needed him. Of course, there was conflict, as Obi-Wan, in an attempt to protect Luke, didn't tell him the truth about his father being Darth Vader. Besides that, the relationship was rather solid. Rather simplistic, but very true. I remember watching, and a lot of what I do now is basically spiritually based. It has a lot to do with um, things like the Force, what I would call chi or spiritual energy. But so as I'm watching the Star Wars, and this is a time Luke has is chasing one of his droids, R2D2, through the barren wastes, and the Sand People waylay him, knock him out, all these things. And Obi-Wan comes up and saves him, drives him from Sand People away, and brings him back to his hut. Now, this wasn't known at the time, but Obi-Wan's been there since Luke was a baby, watching over him, making sure that nothing happened to him, to be there for him when he was needed. He'd given up the rest of his life to do that, to stay on Tatooine and wait for Luke um, after the destruction of the Jedi. So that's what he's done. He's put, he could be doing the other things, hiding other places, but no, he stayed there and waited for Luke because he knew how powerful Luke was going to be. And so they had their first conversation, and Obi-Wan's talking about the Force and this, and Luke's like, "Oh, yeah, that's neat, but I've got this, I've got that to do. I can't. I've got the harvest." At one point, um, they get the message that Princess Leia sent, asking Obi-Wan to help her, and their father. And Obi-Wan looks at it and considers things for a minute. He looks at Luke. He says, "You must learn the ways of the Force if you're coming with me to Alderaan." And Luke goes into his, "Oh, I can't do that. I've got this." And this is so much what so many people go through in their life. It's like the call to adventure comes, and all these duties that have been imposed upon them that they don't have to have necessarily get in the way. And they won't let themselves become actualized. They won't let themselves become their fuller self because they've never been encouraged to. His uncle Owen went to great lengths to make sure he didn't figure out who he was because he was afraid he'd turn into Vader like character. So Obi-Wan encourages him to say, that's your uncle talking when you say things like that. Look into yourself, and see what's best for you. And so Luke, still not doing it. Obi-Wan, okay, like a good father, okay, I understand. Instead of tirading and saying, you need to do this and that, no, that's, it's your choice. You always have a choice. Of course, Luke, they get there, find a bunch of sand people, not sand people, Jawas dead. Luke runs home thinking that's probably why they attacked the Jawas, because they're stormtroopers. And sure enough, he gets back home, his aunt and uncle are dead. So now he has only one father figure left. It was Owen, and Obi-Wan was starting to become that. And now he goes back and he says, I want to be like my father. I want to learn the ways of the Force and be a Jedi. I want to find myself. Joseph Campbell calls that the hero's journey. All these things happen, and denial of the path, all these things, it all comes in the big formula. But pushing through that, and that's what the father does. As he don't put restraints on him, saying you must do this, you must do that. You must follow your heart. You must find your own destiny. It's not up to me. And I told both my children this. It's up to you to find it. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I will give it, but I gave them every tool I could to help them along the way. That's something my dad was not really strong at. He was very good about being accepting, but he always wasn't real good about giving me tools along the way. So I had to figure out a lot of that myself, which is fine. He did what he could do, and I've always realized that fathers are the products of their own upbringing. He actually exceeded. He pushed past his in a lot of different ways. And so it was my job to take it even further and to be openly supportive and nurturing about how my children took their path. So there's another story there in popular movies, and of course, hundreds of Star Wars books out there. That you find a lot of good father stories. Han Solo is another one. So the cool stuff about that is that you can go to the movie theater, and if it's something that's like this type of life type of play is going on. This is these are real people. Characters are doing real people things and fighting through not just their enemies, but they're fighting with themselves and their own growth. And so that's what this is what people like Obi-Wan do, is to help you through that process. To put aside the old arguments against finding your path, to say, I'm ready to go. If Obi-Wan had laid that groundwork down for Luke, after he saw his aunt and uncle were dead, he would have had nothing. He may not have come back to Obi-Wan. He might have gotten crazy and gone someplace else. But he knew where to go back to. And he went back to Obi-Wan and began his teaching. And so that story in itself, just in the first Star Wars, meant a lot to me. Also, when I mentioned earlier that as I did my wonderful Alec Guinness impersonation. You must learn the ways of the Force. The first time I heard that, I got a thrill down my back. And I didn't know why for many years. But when I had my epiphany, my satori, my spiritual breakthrough, I was reminded of that. I went through something that Luke went through, a lot of people go through. It's like realizing that there is something out there bigger than me that I'm supposed to be a part of. And so we learn that through these types of tales as well. And again, I have to thank my dad for that because he encouraged me to explore these things. Different literature. He would suggest books, of course, but would also take my suggestions as well. So yeah, I mean, good stuff there from on the dad side. Now, when I was, it was about 20 years ago. My father had been married before he and my mother married, and he'd had a daughter named Jan. And we didn't grow up together, obviously. She was out in California, in Arizona, and we were in the Midwest, of course. And I knew about her. Dad had mentioned it one time, but it was like it wasn't part of my life, so I wasn't too worried about it. And I trusted Dad. I didn't expect anything bad to happen, which it didn't. So she'd written Dad finally, and gotten his address and written him. And he asked me if I would contact her first. Because, there was issues there with my mom with that too. So yeah, I said, sure. I have no problem doing that. And since I'm the only child, so of that union, so I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Because I was kind of curious. So I reach out to my sister after being raised without a sister. And we instantly developed a very good relationship, which we still share. And we were talking, like the second time I talked to her. They were planning on coming here, she and my niece, who I'd obviously never met before. And so I was we were talking about my dad. And she says, what's he like? And see, Jan and I are both, it's just funny because she is very literate too. I mean, she loves books and things like that too. It's almost like she was raised in the same house. We have a lot of similar of taste and things and whatnot. We have some very different ones too, but you could tell that spark was still there for this type of literature and things like that, adventure story. And I said, I thought, and I wanted to use something from literature because that would strike home to bear. I said, he's like Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird. And, back then he's played by Gregory Peck in a marvelous book. And to me, Atticus was like the coolest father ever. Okay, even when I saw the movie as a kid, that guy's cool. My dad's almost as cool as he is, but he's cool. And that resonated with her. And after she met him, she goes, "Yeah, you're right. He is like that. And he's very much like that." But I picked out. This came from the BBC Culture, their website. It was written by David G. Allen, and it first appeared on February 18th, 2016. And what it was is how can Atticus Finch teach parents today? And so I pulled this because I thought it was really interesting. And I liked it because it does. It really brings out what my dad was like, what Atticus Finch was like. So it has 5 lessons to it. Lesson 1, live your values. Atticus lives by a code. Let your conscience be your guide. That's why he takes on the case at the heart of the story, the defense of a black man falsely accused of raping a white woman. Scout tells Atticus that most people in town think it's wrong to defend the accused man. Scout's his daughter. But Atticus explains that they're entitled to the full respect of their opinions. But before I can live with other folks, I've got to live with myself. One thing that doesn't abide by majority rule is a person's conscience. Wow. If he didn't take the case, Atticus tells Scout, I could never ask you to mind me again. I can't sit here and say how people should live and not do the same thing myself. If I tell my kids to do something, I darn well better be doing it. Or it doesn't mean anything. Or I can see why they wouldn't pay, they wouldn't respect me, wouldn't, mind me again. And I remember my dad did walk his talk. I will say this. He wasn't the most confrontive man, or, he wasn't out in the streets. Well, he had to walk picket duty as a teacher. Besides that, he was not horribly demonstrative. But he did live his life in that way. He worked at a school, private school, um, where they had never had an African American student, a black student. And the way it was run, it wasn't going to happen. I knew it was starting to grade on. But what would happen if a black family came to, like, wanted to tour the school? Even my dad wasn't there. They would call him up and have him come down and talk to him. It's not they would want to talk to him. And my dad did. And he always treated people with great respect. And I'm sure he let them know, in a subtle way, that, these people here aren't like this. So, he would do that. I asked him why once. He was like that. He goes, because I was all down with it. But, he came from a rural area in southeast Missouri. A lot of people aren't, especially when he was there, weren't too fond of people of different color. And he goes, you know what? He goes, I was in a store one time when I was a kid. And he goes, a black man came in and stood there with his hat in his hands. Everybody talked around him. Nobody waited him. He just stood there and waited until somebody finally acknowledged him and asked him what he wanted. And my dad said, I couldn't stand watching that. He was a man like anybody else. He should have been. They should have. He goes, it was right there and then. He goes, I decided that wasn't the way. And that made a big impression on me. So yeah, our parents teach us our values. Some people say that the mother teaches love and the father teaches action. Now, different people can have different roles in that. Okay, does it male and female? But somewhere along the line, that the child has to learn both things. But so he has values, and I have values, and my kids know my values, and most people know what my values are. And I let people know what they are, and I try to walk my talk the best I can. Okay, lesson 2. Listen to both sides of every story. Unsurprisingly, for a lawyer, Atticus tries to look at any given situation from both sides. When Scout gets in trouble on her first day at school for already knowing how to read, thanks to Atticus, he suggests Scout look at it from the teacher's point of view and how it could be disruptive to her lessons. In a more serious moment, though, when Atticus is threatened by the father of the novel's alleged rape victim, Bob Ewell, he doesn't react, showing a degree of emotional resilience few of us could summon. Atticus later tells an outraged Jim, his son, see if you can stand in Bob Ewell's shoes a minute. I destroyed his last shred of credibility at that trial, if he had any to begin with. The man had to have some kind of comeback. His kind always does. He had to take it out on somebody, and I'd rather it be me than that house full of children. So Atticus, instead of thinking about somebody else, is also showing empathy. He doesn't agree with Bob Ewell, but he understands it. He's willing to let Bob Ewell dump on him, threaten him, spit on him, and doesn't react, because he knows by letting this man get this out of his system right there and then, he was less likely to go home and abuse his children, which he often did in the novel. So you got to. It's about empathy. It's about compassion, and it's such a good lesson. I mean, he taught me that other people have different ideas about things, and we should be respectful of them. And you try to part that in your own children. It's like, I know that their behavior is really pretty bad, but look at where they're from. Look where they're coming from. You can walk away, don't sit there and stand and take it, but to engage in a verbal or physical exchange because of things like that, it's a waste of time. It does nobody any good. Show your resilience. Stand there and let that person spin themselves out. And you look like the bigger person. You're teaching a good lesson. The other person realizes, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Doesn't often happen, but it can. So yeah, look at both sides of the story. Everybody looks at the world differently than you do. Lesson 3, keep calm in a crisis. Perhaps more enviable in Atticus' parenting and hardest to achieve in reality is the quality that the adult scout describes in an infinite capacity for calming turbulent seas. There is nothing, almost nothing that ruffles Atticus's feathers. When Bob Buell curses at him, threatens his life, and spits in his face, Atticus's only reaction is, "I wish Bob Buell wouldn't chew tobacco." It's his big complaint about that whole thing. A rabid dog lumbers down the street, and Atticus calmly but effectively and efficiently shoots it dead, to his children's amazement, as he never boasts about his marksmanship. Repeatedly in the novel, Atticus reassures his children in such difficult moments that it's not time to worry. And yet an appropriate time to panic never seems to arrive. When you show calm in a crisis, my father would show calm. When you convey that to your children, as he did to me, it lets them handle these types of situations much better. I was, he gave it to me, or, this ability, like when things really start, somebody's sick or somebody's hurt. I mean, I don't get excited. I start getting real rational and just, okay, what do I need to do? Just take on that role of somebody who's going to solve this problem. Now I might fall apart afterwards or get upset afterwards. But yeah, being and Atticus teaches us that just be calm and work through it. Okay, getting panicky and excited, it's not going to do any good. And you're trying to, you're trying to, be there for your children, protect your children. And if you're running around hands in the air screaming, that's not going to do it. It's not going to protect them. It's also going to make them want to do the same thing in a crisis. And so that's what Joe Sutton and Atticus Finch taught me, is to be calm when there's a crisis going on. Number 4, have faith in your children. One of the most difficult dances of parenting is knowing when to give your children the right answers and when to trust their own ability to find them. Jim and Scout are at a good age to test these waters, and Atticus seeks out opportunities for them to exercise their own judgment. He also trusts them with the truth. When a child asks you something, answer him for goodness sake. Atticus tells his brother, children are children, but they can spot an evasion quicker than adults. When Scout asks him what rape means, Atticus gives her a dry but accurate legal definition, and she is satisfied. Yeah, I mean, trust them to do things, to find things on their own, and to empower them to do so. Kids, that's how kids learn. They use their own judgment on things. You can teach them, but they have to go out and do it for it to really work. But you give them opportunities that they can handle. You give them information they can handle at that time. You don't lie to them. Okay, but you give them information you can handle. My dad gave me I asked him about the birds and the bees one time, and I got like the clinical dry definition, like Atticus did with Scotland, talking about rape. And I think Dad figured that's probably about as much as I could handle with him. I think he was more uncomfortable talking about than anything else. But I mean, his father never talked about anything, stuff like that. So he was always kind of a little bit shy about talking about certain things. But he did the best he could, and so let's go as Atticus does. But yeah, when you give your child opportunities to grow as a person, when you trust them, when you tell them the truth, you're teaching them to do the same thing. That's what my father taught me, how to do that. Because when your own children, you do that with your own children, they do it. It just keeps going forward, and it makes a better world because they'll teach their children the same things. So yeah, it's a good thing to do. Lesson 5, last one. You don't have to be tough to be brave. Atticus shows this in the smallest of ways, such as with the family's ornery old neighbor, Mrs. Dubois, who makes a habit of taunting Jim and Scott when they walk by her house. Just hold your head high and be a gentleman, Atticus advises Jim. Whatever she says to you, it's your job not to let her make you mad. True to form, Atticus disarms Mrs. Dubois with smiles and compliments, leading Scott to marvel. It was times like these when I thought my father, who hated guns, had never been to any wars, was the bravest man who ever lived. And it's true. I mean, not only that, that's a pretty mild example from this book. He's already taken on a case that has really enraged the town in certain ways, that he would do something like that. He's been threatened. He goes and faces down a mob that's going to lynch the black man who was accused of raping the girl. And just without raising a fist, without picking up a gun, the only time he uses a gun is when he has to, because the dog could have bitten one of the kids or somebody else, and so he did what had to be done. But always did it, as compassionately as he could without violence. This is a very strong man. So one of the, and it's such a marvelous example, and I wish more people would look at it today, because I see a lot of fathers out there acting like fools, and teaching their kids their prejudices, how to use their anger in situations rather than using calmness, using smiles and laughter can diffuse a situation so well without escalating to something else. And that's one of the things. It's one of the best things that my father taught me. Because Finch teaches many people to stay calm in adversity, and being brave has nothing to do most times with physical violence. It has to do with being who you are, standing up for your principles, and standing up for the rights of other people in a nonviolent way. And those are lessons that I certainly got from my father. So those are our 5. In closing, I just want to thank everybody for watching. If you ever have any comments, or if you want to discuss this with me or whatnot, you can email me at coyotechris1957@gmail.com. But yeah, it's Father's Day, and I know my kids got something planned for me here. Well, this is actually not Sunday, but that they will at this time. So I hope you all have a great day. I would like to end up with some readings, though. I have some quotes here as a way of closing. The first one goes like this. When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant, I could hardly stand to have the old man around. When I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years. Mark Twain. And I can remember the same thing. You're a teenager, it's like, would you shut up? You didn't say very much. It's like, come on, I know what I'm doing. But at 21, I'm like, okay, no, you're pretty smart. I get it. As soon as first time I ever saw it, I thought, my goodness, that is so true. Um, the next one, it's only when you grow up and step back from him or leave him for your own home, it is only then that you can measure his greatness. That was Margaret Truman. And, I guess he's a pretty good father to Margaret. Remember she gave I read someplace she'd given a piano recital or something like that. Was panned by some critics, and used a rather foul term to describe them, publicly. So he was a pretty fierce father, I think. For Margaret there. So that's a pretty cool quote. Two people from Missouri to start. Yeah. My father was a big Mark Twain fan too. He taught Mark Twain, so I had to throw him in there. Next one. My father used to play with my brother and me in the yard. Mother would come out and say, "You're tearing up the grass." "We're not raising grass," Dad would reply. "We're raising boys." It's Harmon Killebrew. Harmon Killebrew was a baseball player for the Minnesota Twins for many years. He was always a hero of mine. He was calm and, didn't get excited, hit a lot of home runs. It seemed like an all-around good person. And I saw that quote and I said, I got to have that because baseball is a big part of my life. My dad got me to many games and things like that. And so, I resonate very well with baseball and that with my dad. And so I had to throw him in there. But that's what you're doing. Don't worry about the yard. Let's raise the kids, And granted, you want the old tires in your yard and stuff like that, but something like, torn grass now. Having a good time and being with your kids, that's what counts. And lastly, if there's any immortality to be had amongst us human beings, it is certainly only the love we leave behind. Fathers like mine don't ever die, as mine does not either. Thank you very much. Have a great day and blessings to all of you.
This service is now concluded, and these are the words usually spoken in unison as we extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we're together again. And we hope you'll join us next week when our service will occur at 11 o'clock as we join the UUA General Assembly. You can do this online at the link provided here or by visiting our online newsletter, or you can gather as a congregation live to watch the service in our own Alton sanctuary. All safety precautions will be in place for this service.